Usually when I'm speaking with people since I got here, I would say that I talk really fast because of my accent. I'll try and speak slowly and clearly, but because I feel very much at home, you will listen. Okay, so I'm supposed to talk about the gendered impact of oppression experienced by African Canadian women on career pursuits and well-being, and just basically discuss a way forward. But like I said, somehow it's all been discussed. I think I'll just breeze through just a few lived experiences, just to set perspective and just move forward to what can be done about it. I won't be looking at it anymore from an academic perspective. Dr. Luanga helped with that, and her team helped with that yesterday, and Dr. Sharab's work was outstanding as well, looking at it from the medical perspective. Can we give a round of applause to those who presented yesterday and this morning? It's been very, very informative, and I have learned quite a lot, so much to work on and act upon going forward. Speaking on going forward, I'd like to say that I don't want to dwell too much on the history. I'll just give a brief history, very, very brief. So I came into Canada in 2016 as a lawyer. I had high hopes, as everyone else usually does. I understood I couldn't automatically practice law here. Actually, if I'm being honest, even if I was offered the opportunity to practice immediately, I probably wouldn't have taken it, because I regard the legal practice as a very strong yet delicate process. So I thought it was wise to take time to study the legal system here. So I was willing to take the exams that were required to take. I was willing to do my, to do my time. But my plan was that I'll work, in a sophisticated law firm in the meantime, and support my family while I'm writing my examinations. So I didn't get a sophisticated law firm job, and I eventually had to settle with working in a retail firm. Basically, I worked in a store because the bills were piling up while my job wasn't coming. So I want to share two experiences from when I was there. The first is that while I was working there, and I did a very good job there, I think I had a very good attitude, just because, it was my first job in Canada, so I tried not to grumble too much about doing the things I did when I was in boarding house. I tried to keep a good attitude, so I think I did a good job at my at the work that I was doing there. And then at a point in time, I had a new manager come in to head my department. Around the time this manager had come in, I became pregnant. So if anyone has any experience with first trimester, it's the time when you are very tired, very everything. I had plans for my first trimester. I was supposed to be the strongest woman who was ever pregnant. We have no morning sickness, no throwing up, nothing. I think I survived, I escaped most of it, but I was tired on some days. So when I had morning shifts, I would call in to say I would need 30 minutes or 1 hour extra. After a month, I realized I couldn't do this every week, because every week, at least once or twice, I would have to make that call. So I spoke with my manager about, would it be possible to change my schedule? She said, okay, can we talk about it at the end of the shift? I said, sure. And then at the end of the shift, at the end of the day, she called me to her office. She said, I want to talk to you about the fact that you've been coming very late to work very often. I was like, yeah, that's what I was saying. And she was like, this is becoming very unbecoming, blah, blah, blah. Like, yeah, this is happening because I'm pregnant. And I started to cry because I didn't expect that it would happen that way. And she was like, so you're pregnant? Okay. And she pushed the paper and says, sign this warning letter. And that was it for me. Another experience I had working there was, so those that know me know that I don't like to spend money if I have my way. Anything that comes free works for me. So a day before this day, I had just found out, since I got to Canada, that you can actually refill your pop in when you go to McDonald's or any of those stores, you can refill. I had no idea before that day. And so my friend told me on our way out of the store that day, I was like, are you serious? Like, when you finish your cup, you can go back. And she was like, yeah. I was like, how did I not know that? So I went home, I told my husband, he was like, yeah, like everyone knows that. I didn't know. So the following day, before my shift began, because there was a McDonald's right there, and I usually had my lunch. When I became pregnant, I became hungry, so I would have lunch. And then I went straight to the manager of the McDonald's. I heard this, is it true? I was like, yeah, thank you very much. So this is good news. So I exercised my fundamental McDonald's rights that lunch, and I went for a refill. While I was getting the refill, about 4 of my managers were there. And I saw one of the assistant store manager look at me as I went in, to have the refill. And then I could see he was whispering with the others. And then all of them were looking at me till I left. And I was like, wait, I thought this lady said it was right. Why are these people staring at me so bad? I couldn't understand it. So, it stayed with me till the end of my shift. So at the end of my shift, on my way out, can I talk to you? I saw you looking at me funny. And then he says, I had to ask questions like, what exactly was the problem? Why did you have to look at me that way? And he says, well, how was I to know you weren't stealing that pop? Yeah, exactly. I mean, I didn't sleep well that night. And we've talked about perspective. Maybe he would have said that to a white male who was going for a refill. Maybe. But he had me thinking, and I think you would understand how we would have you thinking. What exactly was it? Was it because I was excitedly going? What exactly was it that made you think I would steal pop? Right. So these are just 2 experiences that just got me. Because I have big plans in Canada. I try not to get stuck with those things, but those are the kind of things that we experience every day. Okay, sorry, my slide. Basically, this was what I was supposed to go through, but I'll skip through them. So that's my 2-year-old daughter. So this is like a manipulative trick. I look for very cute pictures of her in my presentation so that all of you say, "Aw." Please say, "Aw." Thank you very much. We desire to bequeath 2 things to our children. The first one is roots, and that's why we educate them on our history. And the second is wings, to give them the ability to be able to fly and go beyond where we are. That's why we're working hard to protect not only our reality, but even their future. History is important. Until the story of the hunt is told by the lion, the tale of the hunt will always glorify the hunter. The death of an elderly man is like a burning library. And that's why I appreciate the first session of this program, the things that we didn't know before. I mean, how many of us learned new things this morning about our history, right? And so I imagine, and I appreciate the lady who, the ladies who came yesterday about the daycare, the things they said, it got me thinking, the demands I'm going to make to my daughter's daycare going forward. I want you to educate my daughter about her roots. Those are the kind of things I'm probably going to be taking forward. So the reason I said that story was to introduce this. What did I do about those 2 experiences I had? Nothing, except cry and tell my friends about it and hate those people for 1 minute. Actually, 2 minutes. Until I let it go because I had moved on. I was in a better place. I didn't know what I could have done. I mean, because I'm a lawyer, I thought of getting a lawyer, but I was like, is it worth? I mean, how much do I make that I would get a lawyer? I didn't know that I could have, at the time, I didn't know of the structure of the Saskatchewan Human Rights Commission, so I thought I might use the opportunity to, inform us. Sometimes the reason there's disappointment when we go to the Human Rights Commission is maybe at the timing, the information you provide, your perspective of things, which might vary from the restrictions of the code. So I thought I might just educate us a bit on the code. So these are the protected grounds. We can see them, so I won't bother to just say them anymore. These are the grounds under which you can bring a complaint to the Human Rights Code. And then these are the areas that the code covers. If, for example, your wife was racist towards you, if it's not under I don't think that would be covered here. So we wouldn't be able to help you because we're guided and we're guided by the law. So for a complaint to be accepted, the discrimination has to be on one of those things, and then it has to be within 1 year. So if what you're bringing to us happened past a year, we also would not be able to help much as we want to. And that happens a lot. Someone, struggled. Imagine that I internalized that for a year, and the time I was finally able to speak up, it's past a year. I would feel frustrated that the commission was unable to help me. Okay, so I wanted to just encourage us, even when you're not sure, please go online, Google Saskatchewan Human Rights Commission, something will pop up, find a phone number, ask questions. If we're not the organization to help, someone else might be, right? Sometimes it's a harassment, not because of your race. We don't see the evidence that's because of your race. Sometimes you just have a terrible boss. Then we can refer you to the occupational health and safety, for example. So even if we may not be able to help, we may know who may be able to help. If no government organization is empowered to help you, then we can, refer you to legal aid or talk to a lawyer if you can afford it. So, can I? Thank you. Okay. So why women? Okay. So this is, I think, very important to mention. I feel the pain of the African man. Just yesterday when Dr. Alfonso was talking, I was like, oh, I imagine what the African man must be facing, to have something a certain way and then be confronted with changes, to have, certain privileges and then have them snatched. That can't all be easy. I guess the comfort would be in the quote of Chimamanda Adichie, who says, culture does not make people, people make culture. So that even though the culture of the African man or the privilege of the African man from where he's coming is in a way, he would have to perhaps reform them to the culture of the African Canadian man to be able to accommodate both his history and his future. But why are we talking about women? Why do we make so much noise about women? In preparing for this conference, I was having discussions with a number of my friends about, what their career aspirations were and what the limitations were, if at all. And one of them had mentioned to me how she actually studied petroleum engineering. And I had no idea. I was like, why aren't you doing something in that field? She was like, well, my husband also does something like that, and he has to travel, so she has decided to stay back. So this is a woman holding herself back so that her husband can go forward. That's why we're discussing women. We're also discussing women because we acknowledge that there's a glass ceiling, that even though a man and a woman will work the same job, she would get paid less most of the time. We're discussing women because the standards of employment is even different, that when a man and a woman are applying for a job, the standard for a man is that he has to be good enough, but for a woman to be employed, she has to be exceptionally good. I don't know, those who are employers may be able to attest to that. We're talking about women because gender and, no, there's no need to say this, Doctor has already mentioned that. We're talking about women because they bear children, and whether we agree, whether we like it or not, sometimes it causes a delay in our career growth. So that if I start my career with a male counterpart, the time that I'm going to have a child or 2 children or 3 children and nurture them would be the minus for my career growth. That's why we have to talk about women. We're talking about women because what we see, or what I see, and I don't know if it's the same for you, the building I work in, especially for the intersectional, those who are both immigrants and women, we don't see them at the table. What I see is that they're cleaning up after the table has met, so that you see them, they're the ones doing the menial job. Sometimes you just want to see someone that looks like you. I work in a very fantastic environment. I'm not even going to pretend that I don't. But sometimes I'm like, it would be nice to see, and it's a big building. It's a big building, many offices in my building. But the only black woman I get to see is in another office, one, and then the others are the cleaners, Yeah, that's why we're talking about this. That's why we're discussing women. We're talking about women because they're the ones that struggle with childcare. I would like to quote Chimamanda Adichie again. She said, "It's terrible that we live in a world that doesn't think it's important to support the people whose bodies do the work to make sure that our species continue to thrive. We would all be extinct if all women chose not to be pregnant." I wish we would dare to do that. So we've talked about what the government is required to do. We've talked about what the privileged ones are required to do. We've talked about what the male, the men are required to do for us. What can we do for ourselves? Dr. Lwanga's team talked a bit about this, so I'll just highlight the other things that maybe we didn't mention. Courage, confidence, to have healthy ways of channeling out the negative energy that hits us. I think we're the most receptive, we're the most sensitive to this macroaggression that we talked about yesterday. We're the ones that hear when someone is saying something silly and they're not going to be willing to acknowledge or be accountable for it. We're the ones that hear it. So we need channels, we need the community to be able to channel that energy so that we're not keeping it in ourselves. We also need mentorship. When there's one female somebody up there, it would be nice to pull other people up. It would be nice to, the sky is wide enough, right? I think it's a lonely place when you're the only one who looks like you up there. Maybe sometimes you feel like you're outshining others, but think about it. Your children are going to want other examples apart from you tomorrow. And I'd like my kid to know that both myself and 5 of my friends are directors, or both. I don't know if you understand what I mean. So mentorship, I think, is a very, very, very key factor in us getting to where we want to be as concerns our career goals. Tyler Perry said, if they will not give us a seat at the table, we do what? Build our own table. That's something else we have to do. Perhaps we'll take a break on complaining. We've complained enough. Or we perhaps continue complaining. But while we're doing that, let's build our own table. Make that table count until that table is the table.
She's just explained how when women build their own table,
yes,
women also fight each other. And the table is no longer there.
Thank you. My 5 minutes, so I shouldn't even bother. All right. I think I'm done. So it may be hard work, it may be all of that, but as this African proverb says, the river may be wide, but it can be crossed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Shidi. Appreciate that gender impact of oppression. Please welcome now Rose Khumbu, personal level development. Give her a hand.
Okay, so I'm gonna be talking about personal development, remaining open-minded. Being a daughter, sister, wife, mother, leader, and also businesswoman take determination, courage, a lot of self-motivation, and sacrifice. I grew up in Kinshasa, Congo, with 35 siblings, from a father who was wealth and who believed also in equality and education. I moved in Canada in 1997 after my dad passed away from poisoning for the politician background. I grew up knowing that how much is important to stand for what you believe in and what you want to achieve in life. That quote, never let anybody make you feel less or small just because you are a woman. I graduated in 1995 in accounting. My dad hired me as his personal secretary. My dad was the only man in country who was actually, in Africa we have a notary, and in my country there's one notary for the entire country. So that's how I learned how to work and be my own person through my dad. We own a land of coffee and diamond where I start working and doing inventory after my study. Why am I talking about this? because for me, Canada was not a land of opportunity. My country was my opportunity. Where I'm coming from was a land of opportunity. Everything stopped the day my dad passed because somebody decided to take my dream away by poisoning him. Before that, Dad passed away just in 1997. Before that, he asked me, what do you want to do? You want to do business or you want to go abroad? My mom looked at me and said, just go. Things are not good. So I left to Tunis, where I studied economy. For after 1 year, my dad passed. I couldn't pursue my study. My brother was in Canada and bring me to Canada. I pursued to study in Tunis because I wanted to become a border doctor, and I couldn't achieve that without that. I'm a Francophone. I moved to Alberta at that time and decided that even though they took my dad, but they cannot take my dream. I start working hard. My first work, I remember, was a manufacturing place. I grew up with 5 maids, 3 drivers, and I have to be a maid for somebody else. From there, I knew if I don't do anything about this, my life will never be the same, or I will never have that standard that my father gave to me. I decided to be my own person, and I stood and be confident. I started being involved with the Albertan Francophone. That was the first organization of Franco-Albertan that took place in Calgary, Alberta. There I sit on the board. Again, we are talking about sitting at that table. I sit at those tables with people who have PhD, doctors, and I was 17. I was one of the youngest in the group, and a woman and black. Let's say Negro. But that didn't stop me to pursue my ambition. I wanted to be a businesswoman, not just any businesswoman, but with integrity, confident and honest leader, and be an example to others, and not just to people around me, but maybe I can impact the next generation. Remaining open-minded to me, it's really a simple question of being honest, being able to understand, and look at a different angle, and dare to share my experience and what I went through all those years by being somebody made, actually being a rich kid to being a somebody made, make me become so stronger. So because that's opportunity for me to be who I am today. I stand here in acknowledging of that opportunity. If maybe my dad was alive, I would not have passed this moment. Money is something, but what you do with that money is more important. When I started my business in Saskatchewan, I first started in Ontario, moved to Saskatchewan, following my husband into his police career in Saskatoon. When I met people, they say, no, you can't do this business. No, this kind of food you are cooking, nobody will come. You need capital, you need strategy. But I knew because of what I went before, my past life in Tunis, by working and picking up in the garbage to eat. I knew that I don't need capital. I don't need to have an experience. I knew I can just be who I am. I have to find me. All I will say about finding me, those are the points I developed as in my career. Today, I own a restaurant business. I sit on 3 board of directors in Saskatoon. I work for the government on the level of economy and development of Saskatchewan for the Francophones. Just to be short, I put little bit points on my own experience just to share. I say the first thing first you need to know. It put first God, because that was a secret. Even though I left my parents, when I was in Tunis, I knew how to pray and worship. I knew who I was. There were no questions. When I'm talking about knowing God first and putting God first, it's not about just being a Christian. It's a lifestyle. Who you are, it's most important than just the title you hold. I'm not talking about your title as a doctor, as a PhD, as a nurse, or even a chef I am. I'm talking about really knowing who you are and who I am. I am a child of the Most High God. That's who I am. That starts from there. And that helped me to focus. The second point I put together in my experience to develop myself, to strive, was to not be scared to fail. And when you fail big. Fail big. Because when you stand, you're gonna stand big. There's nobody gonna tell you, I know everything, I have done it. No, they've been failing and standing. That's what makes them better. I will say when you fail big out of your comfort zone. Like, do things that you think like nobody else say. Denzel Washington say, do 90% of what everybody is not doing. I believe also that applying discipline and commitment to those values on when you fail, you stand, then you need a plan. Because like we say, you don't plan to fail, you fail to plan. You need commitment and consistency. You gotta have discipline. And discipline means you have to be there, you have to do things, you have to do it. When Christine came and Lisa, they came, we were in Saskatoon, I was just looking at them. They were just talking to me about all the ACR and how compassionate they were. I look at those women, I say, wow, this is what I've been waiting for. This is what I wanna be. I don't maybe wanna have Christine PH or being a doctor, but there's something in her that I'm looking for. I wanna be empowered and be empowered with the right person around me. So then I decide to plan. How do I plan? It's what you do with what you wanna become. If you are a preacher, if you are you have a master's degree, you are a nurse or you are a cook, good feeling to help. Feel to help because at the end of the day, the only thing I planned was to reach others. That's why I start with Alberta organization, because I gotta connect. I have to find who I am. And then when I connect to others, I was able to mirror myself to what I was capable to do in other people's lives. If I can reach you, then I can reach myself at the same time, because together we become more stronger. Whatever you desire in your heart and whatever you receive, just remember to reach others. Because at the end of the day, we don't just live. We don't aspire people because to be rich. You don't do stuff because you want your name to be out there. You do stuff because you want to make a difference. And that difference, it's you first. You find yourself first. Then when you get rich, what you are looking for, you start finding harder. You have to reach to other people. You have to push more than what you think you can just give. It takes sacrifice to win. Jesus died at the cross for a reason, and that reason remains today. I don't call myself a Christian. I call myself a follower of Jesus Christ. Thank you very much.